Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MonoBlueTron, back again with another ban list discussion video. Guess what just came out? That's correct, it's the September ban list. This was promised to us no sooner than August, and here we are, no sooner than August. I was just playing a game of the new League mode, Odyssey. This content is also sponsored by League of Legends. That's not true, but if you're interested, hit me up, Riot Games. When my Discord exploded, telling me that something terrible had happened, and here we are, viewing something terrible. As always, these videos specifically aren't exactly scripted. I have a bullet point list of things that I want to touch on. I'm going to go over the entirety of the ban list, my feelings on each of the individual cards, who I think the big losers and winners are, and what I think it means for the meta. It isn't scripted, these are just kind of off-the-cuff thoughts, and obviously the ban list came out under an hour ago, so these are, in a lot of ways, my not blind reactions, but I haven't thought about it very much. Don't clip specific parts of this and send them to me on Twitch or Discord or anything like that where I say something like Samusara Lotus should have been at 4. So let's look at the individual cards. First, the list in and of itself, forbidden from wherever, was Samusara Lotus, Nightmare Goblin, and MX Saber Invoker. Limited cards include a Assault Core, Elemental Heroes Stratos, Morphing Jar, Heavy Metal Foes Electromite, Psy Frame Lord Omega, Evil Swarm Exotonite, A Hero Lives, Card Destruction, Sky Striker Mecha Hornet Drones, and Super Polymerization. Semi-limited includes Cosmo Dark Destroyer, Called by the Grave, Limiter Removal, Scapegoat, and Terraforming. Unlimited cards are Apically Fort Towers, Disc Commander with Errata, Burial from a Different Dimension, and Ring of Destruction. Destruction. It's been a while since I've had to actually play with this card, despite it being at 2, probably why it's at 3 now. So let's go through the individual cards. First, the Forbidden list. So Samusara Lotus might seem kind of out of left field to a lot of you. The reason this was put on the list is because there's an end phase FTK with it that you can perform like a whole bunch of times in one turn. It's extremely odd, but it uses Topologic Bomber Dragon, Trickstar Black Catbat, I believe, is involved, and then Reborn Samusara Lotus like over and over and over again. That's obviously a type of gameplay that Konami doesn't want to incentivize. In fact, this entire list is kind of big FU to a bunch of FTK strategies. The second banned card is Nightmare Goblin. Now, this is a very interesting hit. This and MX Saber Invoker are clearly aimed at Goki, and the first question we have to be asking is, why is Goki receiving more hate despite being arguably, like, maybe the second or third best deck? And the reason is because Goki isn't particularly interactive. Like, all of the decks in Yu-Gi-Oh!, with the exception of U-Board Goki, do have some form of interaction. Like, we can get into a big argument about whether or not it is particularly interactive for, say, a Sky Striker player to go +4 on the first turn, but at the end of the day, you do get to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And if your deck is robust enough, and efficient enough, and redundant enough, you are going to get to resolve cards. Goki does not work that way. Goki is an extremely feast or famine deck that aims to prevent you from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And it turns out in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the game about playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, they want to de-incentivize strategies that allow people to play as little Yu-Gi-Oh! As possible. Nightmare Goblin gives you a extra normal summon, and while this is a very weird pick for the card that they were going to ban, I think everyone was thinking it was going to be this or Isolde or Firewall, and this was like the least likely of the 3. This one also removes the inherent double summon effect from every other deck, which I think was particularly degenerate. Like, not every deck needs access to a double summon. The splashability of the Brilliant engine should prove to you that that might be a problem in the future. MX Saber Invoker was always an issue. The fact that the hand traps were level 3, and this is generic, the fact that it gets Archer, I mean, there's just so many reasons why this was on the short list. Happy to see it go. Unfortunate casualty because, of course, it is an archetypal monster and has never been used for its archetypal purpose. On to the limited list. Wow. Now, this is a lot of dancing around the issue that Konami is doing. A Assault Core to 1. Now, for those of you that don't know, ABC FTK is an incredibly popular deck in other formats. I wouldn't say incredibly popular, but it's like Goki levels of non-interactive. Once again, relying almost exclusively on Firewall Dragon, this strategy aims to, you know, kill your opponent with, like, some number of... I think it uses Cannon Soldier, which is super degenerate. They put a Assault Core to 1. This is the critical part of the combo because it recycles pieces and allows you to basically get infinite fodder for Firewall Dragon in the same way that Goki gets pieces out of your deck, except it doesn't require you to run a lot of bricks. You can just cycle through the same 3 or 4 pieces over and over again. Putting it to 1 prevents you from recycling it with itself, which was the big problem. but it's a really big hit to ABC players, and ABC was like a cool, fun deck that I was happy was rogue playable. This effectively dooms that from being the case, and an unfortunate casualty when Konami refuses to, you know, accept the fact that Firewall Dragon might be responsible for these continued issues. Next is, of course, I mean, I'm not going to say the N-word, but Stratos, man. I mean, here he is. Stratos, he has returned. Stratos coming to 1 is very interesting. On one hand, you have people pointing out that he's at 2 in the OCG and has done absolutely nothing. And on the other hand, you have to recognize, I mean, he doesn't have an OPT clause on him. In a format where we are banning things without OPT clauses because they create enough advantage for Firewall Dragon to pop off, unbanning something like this seems a little scary. Like, I don't think Hero FTK is going to beat anyone anytime soon, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a critical part of a hero strategy. I mean, add to that the fact that, you know, Malicious is a hero, and maybe we have a little bit of trouble brewing. I don't think it's going to be a particularly bad issue. I'm happy to see it brought off, if only for the meme value. It's a fan favorite card, but at the same time, it does make my skin crawl a little bit. Next is, and I can't believe this is happening, Morphing Jar to 1? Like, what the hell? I mean, this plus Card Destruction are obviously takes off the ban list in order to push Danger product. Danger, of course, is the high rarity archetype that Konami is pushing in the TCG. It's very interesting. I like it very much. This enables that strategy a lot. Morphing Jar is an incredible catch-up tool. Card Destruction is incredibly powerful as well, but I hope they're understanding Card Destruction is an incredibly powerful tool for a lot of decks. A lot of decks are going to want to bin their entire hand, and a lot of decks do a lot of really degenerate stuff by making your opponent draw cards. Like, with no Trickstar hits on the ban list, I'm a little concerned that we're giving them a magic reincarnation. Like, a reincarnation they can immediately activate. This is not setting off warning flags for anyone else. Like, by all means, push Danger, and Morphing Jar is a great way to do that. It's slow, you know, it's predictable. But Card Destruction? Really? And I mean, in the same ban list that you're preventing people from playing FTKs, you are unbanning the greatest hand fixer of all time? I don't know. That's just me. Heavy Metal Foes Electromite. Mixed feelings. Pendulum was not a particularly good deck, and I liked seeing it everywhere occasionally. Electromite was critical in multiples to both playing through individual hand traps and being able to set up really big Firewall Pendulum summons. You can't do that anymore, and the reason that Electromite has gone to 1, of course, is because looping multiple Electromite is incredibly powerful and enabled a bunch of really degenerate Firewall plays, but at the same time, that wasn't a type of gameplay that was particularly dominant. It wasn't a type of gameplay that was, like, going to break anything, I don't think, in the near immediate future, and more importantly, this effectively, like, really hampers a deck that wasn't putting up results. Next, we have Psyframe Lord Omega. Ooh, that's a weird one. Psyframe Lord Omega makes sense because, this card probably should have been a 1 like several formats ago. The only time it's ever degenerate is when you're making 3 of them in 1 turn. That is, once again, a type of gameplay that Konami doesn't want to promote. Obviously, taking the big extra link deck out of the game and preventing multiple Gumblar loops from resolving so quickly is one step in that direction. Putting Omega to 1 is another, but it's not like Omega was doing a whole lot now anyway. Evil Swarm... Ooh, boy. Now, some of you may know there's an alternate format of Yu-Gi-Oh! Called Trinity, and I love it. And one of the things I love about it is that it's got the greatest catch-up mechanic of all time, which is Exciton Knight. Exciton Knight is so much fun to play with. If you have never played with Exciton Knight, really, immediately go home, jam a rank 4 engine into your deck, and just try it. It is so much fun. And I mean, everyone talks about how brutal it is to get Exciton for a +9, but it really encourages a type of more conscientious play from both players, you know, keeping the knowledge that Exciton Knight exists in their extra deck in the game. Now, this card has, I think he's been off in the OCG, and it's not like he's breaking anything, but one of the things that the Magic the Gathering designers talk about all the time is the necessity of catch-up mechanics. Like, there should be a way for the person who goes second to be able to continue playing the game. There should be a way for the person who is losing to get back into the game. This is one of those things. It's telegraphed, it's interruptible, everyone knows it's in the extra deck if you're playing a rank 4 strategy. I'm very happy to see it back. This card is a blast. hero lives. I mean, what do I say about a hero lives? It's on here because Stratos came off, right? A hero lives now says, summon a Stratos to your side of the board. Oh, and also get another hero to your hand. You can't keep that at 3 while Stratos is at 1. Unfortunate that we're putting more text on the limited list just to free an individual card from Forbidden to Limited, but if we want consistency across formats and if we want to make Yu-Gi-Oh! Players stop saying the N-word in casual conversation, this is what we have to do. Card destruction, we already went over. Hornet drones, there it is. I mean, we all expected something was going to happen here. It was either going to be the engage hit or the Hornet drones hit, and when faced with a question of which card do we want to ban, the card that is cheap and accessible or the card that is really expensive and accessible, they ban the cheap one. Hornet drones is probably the more problematic of the two cards. Putting it to 1 means that you're not going to see the Sky Striker play happen every time. I actually don't think this is that big of a deal for Sky Striker decks. They already have ways to recycle it multiple times over the course of the game. It is certainly a big deal for decks like Skystar that play an engine of like 3 engage, 3 Hornet Bit, 1 Afterburner. Like, now multiple engage aren't going to be nearly as powerful as they were previously. Deck builders are going to have to decide if they want to be playing an engine with such a ridiculous Garnet ratio. I mean, it's possible we just see Hornet Bit end up in decks as a 1-of now, just as free link material. And at the point you're doing that, why aren't you playing like one-time passcode? Like, I think it's going to be a very effective ultimatum for deck builders. And of course, we have like other formats where this is at 1 that we can draw inspiration from. Now time for the big one. This is the last limited card. Super Polymerization. There's a lot to say about this one. Now, remember, there are a couple of things that prevent this from being as busted as you would think it is. We are missing critical fusion monsters with generic materials that prevent this from being really good. But it's still awesome. I mean, Super Polymerization, what do you say? There's so many fusion monsters with so many generic materials that people will be able to jam into their deck. This card isn't really as searchable as I'd like it to be, but you can find it. Like, Super Polymerization is a card that I hope to see jammed. I don't think it will be nearly as impactful as it has been memed into being, but, you know, it's a cool tool. Truthfully, I'm just talking out of my ass on this one. I have no idea how good Super Polymerization is. I missed the entire time it was playable, and I hope I'm not completely wrong. Feel free to edit this part out of the video when you quote me saying Super Poly's not busted. Okay, on to 2s. Now this is weird. Previously, we had seen the semi-limited list to be a sort of quarantine area for cards that were limited, and then they moved to unlimited, but didn't want to immediately unlimit in case they have, like, a pendulum situation again, where they move a bunch of shit from limited to unlimited. It turns out to be completely busted, and then they have to move it back to limited in a couple of formats. That's what Dark Destroyer is here on for. I did make the Cosmo video. It did come out last week. I'm not trying to say that Konami watched it, saw that Dark Destroyer wasn't busted, and then added it to the list. I'm not trying to say that, but it is certainly possible. I do know, based on my YouTube metrics, someone from Konami HQ does watch all of my videos. It's my uncle who works at Konami, and I got him to get Dark Destroyer off the ban list. Thank you. Next is Called by the Grave. This is an odd one. I don't like this. I don't like it at all. I do like stopping tools that stop hand traps. I think anti-hand trap cards are extremely unfair. I do not like them. I think Called by the Grave, I think Gamma, I think Dolphin are all completely degenerate, and I think if there's ever a deck that uses them in any sort of meaningful capacity outside of, like, do get my terraforming search, it's a big problem, as Goki has kind of shown. Having said that, one of the things that I liked about Called by the Grave is that it was available enough that you could always expect your opponent to have at least one copy of a similar card post-boarding. Now it becomes slightly more sackier, but still available, and I don't want to see this semi-limited list become a list of cards that are sacky, but still good. Like cards that are just as available as they were, just in slightly smaller percentages. I want to see it be a place for cards like Zodiac Ratpier that have meaningful impact on being at 2. I want to see it be a quarantine zone for cards that maybe can go to unlimited. I don't want to see it as, like, increase the sack factor of generic good stuff. Limiter removal. This is a quarantine card. It'll come to 3. Scapegoat. Same thing. I wanted Scapegoat banned. I wanted this thing right in the damn trash. It is a travesty that this card is at any number. It is an incredible catch-up mechanic. The format is slow. In a slow format, a card that generates like 4 cards worth of advantage is completely unfair, especially when it is effectively non-interruptible. You can, like solemn this shit. It's absurd. Scapegoat is insane, and putting it at 2 only makes it more sacky. It doesn't make it less good. That's why I'm frustrated. Terraforming. Terraforming should be at 1. I do think that terraforming is incredibly powerful. It is no secret that Yu-Gi-Oh! Should probably stop printing busted field spells. Terraforming is a symptom of the disease. It was fine when it was printed. It is certainly not fine now. I want it at 1. I'll settle for 2. Slightly more sacky, but we're going to find the field spells one way or another, and finding them just a little bit less is okay in this instance. Unlim. Towers. Man, I thought Demise was going to do something for Klee. I thought Towers was going to do something for Klee. It didn't. Still terrible. Really bad. Also, people play Kaiju now. Disc Commander has come back with Errata. So the Errata's already been printed in Duel Links and in the OCG. It's in an upcoming TCG product as well, and will be legal with that Errata only. It's an OPT. Or an OPD. It's once for Duel. And it can't be used the turn it was sent there. It's fine. This card is fine now. Like, it's probably actually playable in, like, slower formats. Maybe in some sort of Strato shell, but it's fine. Burial's fine, too. I mean, Burial was on the list for a couple of reasons, but featured in a bunch of degenerate stuff as well. Said degenerate stuff is no longer as degenerate, so here we are. Errata on Ring of Destruction has largely caused it to be completely unplayable, even in decks that care incidentally about burn damage. Trickstar could have played it at 2, and they didn't. I might try it at the YCS, just because I think there's some interesting things you can do with the deck now. That's really all of my individual thoughts about all the cards. We've been speaking for what? 16 minutes? Alright, hit that ad revenue. Let's talk about the winners and the losers. So, the big losers are the FTK decks. Me specifically, I have ordered a sweatshirt that has the U-board on it, and I can't wear it anymore because it's less relevant. I'm gonna have to get one without Goblin. Goblin wasn't on it. So the FTK strategies are clearly the big losers. Any deck that was using MX Saber Invoker to do degenerate things. Similar big losers include anti-hand trap tools like Aqua Dolphin, whose incidental stat line and occasional hand trap ripability means that those decks that plus off of MX Saber Invoker get a lot less good. Decks that rely on Nightmare Goblin to set up combos are big losers. Hilarious. ABC is probably the biggest loser, and I'm so sorry for that. I mean, they really didn't deserve it. And finally, people who play Samsara Lotus are, of course, the biggest loser. Of the loser tiers, I think it's probably FTKs, ABC, Pendulums, in that order. The bottom 2 probably didn't need to be losers, but were as a result of Firewall. Someday we're going to have to come to grips with the fact that Firewall is kind of dominating Banlist discussions. Big winners are Trickstar. No Trickstar hits at all. Trickstar Pure is a really good deck, and I should know. I'm the highest placing Trickstar Pure player at the NAWCQ, as far as I know. Trickstar Pure is extremely powerful. Access to incredibly strong floodgates that can now get slightly narrower because there is a smaller field because a deck has been artificially removed from it, only means that it's going to get better. It didn't lose anything. And it's not like Goki was a great matchup. It was fine, but it's not like it lost like a 90-10. It lost like a 50-50 or a 55-45, right? Like, I can't see Trickstar as anything but the biggest winner as a result of this. Danger is a big winner. I don't know what that means. Certainly, I don't think it's particularly good now. I mean, 1 copy of Morphing Jar and 1 copy of Card Destruction is not going to solve the outstanding problems that Danger faces, but still, it's a plus. Hero players, people who wanted to stop hearing Yu-Gi-Oh! Players say the N-word are big winners. We have, like, Stratos off, so a bunch of specific, like, hero control shells might be featured. I'm kind of reaching here, but like Yu-Gi-Oh's in a place where you're playing like X number of disruptive cards and then a svelte engine of like 10 to 15 archetypal specifics. Like look at Skies, look at Trickstar, look at Mech Knight, look at Geist. They're all sort of like this. You're playing a good stuff shell of about 18 hand traps and generic answers and potential floodgates and draw spells, and then you're filling in the remainder with archetypal specific linear plans. Potentially Hero becomes one of those engines that we consider. I mean, Shadow Mist is extremely powerful and at 3 in the TCG. Stratos is legal. We still have a Hero Lives. You're not going to brick into multiple copies anymore. I mean, Dark Law is a hell of a card. And of course, Cosmo players. Cosmo players are big winners as well, but there's like 4 of them remaining. So what this means for the meta is a little harder to define. We're obviously in the infancy of this discussion. It's been out for under an hour, as I've said, although by the time I'm finished with this video, it'll probably be out for several days. Really gotta stress, I gotta hit those ad metrics. I really do think that this doesn't shake up the meta as much as you're thinking. Like, I don't think Goki was that much of a cap on the meta as people have made it out to be. Like, if you go to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sub, you'll see endlessly people whinging about Goki, and I should know because I'm one of them. But it's not actually that good. Like, Goki is definitely a top 3 deck for sure. It is certainly extremely powerful. But is it the gatekeeper that's preventing people from playing games? I don't think so. Like, I think any deck with a dedicated linear strategy and a hand trap package of like 15 can probably go toe-to-toe with Goki pretty reliably. It's really just an issue of if your deck is robust enough and linear enough to contain a game plan that can be executed in like maybe 1 card, because the remainder of your hand is interactive tools to stop the Goki plan. The things that are gatekeeping decks out of the format are these decks that amass huge amounts of advantage and then spend it. Altergeist is like this. I mean, it's a control deck that just bleeds advantage, it sweats advantage. Sky Striker is like this. Off of 1 card, they can draw like 4. Trickstar is like this. Candina into a copy of Light Stage, into a copy of Licorice, recycling the Candina. I mean, these individual engines that are extremely searchable and net you a couple of cards, those are what are gatekeeping rogue decks out of the format, because you can trade 1 for 1 with all their threats and still come out on top. As someone who runs a channel that does a lot of testing, I routinely find that brews suffer much worse against the likes of Altergeist and Floodgate Trickstar than they ever did against Goki. Actually, routinely Goki was a good matchup for the bad brews I was playing, because as long as I was on a sufficient number of hand traps, and as long as I found them, I could walk out on top. So I don't think it's going to be a giant shakeup, but I do think it's going to cause a change. And I think we as Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are going to have to rankle with the fact that a lot of skills that weren't being tested as heavily are now going to be tested heavily. Like, certainly at high levels of play, things like understanding card advantage and getting the most out of every individual card over the course of a game are important, but they're going to become a lot more important when there isn't a deck in the format that just like completely disregards it, right? Like, Goki was a deck that would draw like 9 cards and assemble a board that was unoutable no matter how many cards your opponent drew. It's one of those decks where, absent any other hand traps in the format, you would take the Max C challenge, right? Because maybe 40% of your games just weren't decided as a result of that, and if you were playing Goki, probably 100% of your games, you're going to see a difference in the type of people who are topping. You're going to see patient, slow players rising to the top more often than individuals who are particularly good at drawing the cards they need to, you know? I hate to talk about SEMO videos because I already advertise him enough, basically. But the recent video about luck not being a part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to matter more. Like, the top decks are all full of such extremely searchable threats that what's going to matter is your individual ability to navigate board states and play your deck to the most effective and efficient of its ability. Not necessarily your ability to open hand traps against Goki, because there's no more Goki. Finally, as much as I've said that, I don't think this means an end to uninteractive strategies. Like, certainly the top 3 or 4 have been banned out. Like, most of the degenerate things you can do with Firewall are now completely dead or watered down to such an extent that it's not worth doing, but there do remain a couple of pretty critical decks that can extra link you quite easily. What comes to mind is Water. Water is very, very good at assembling Galaxy Tomahawk and has a tremendous backup plan. It can really go into Abyss Megalo and just kill you to death. I mean, Nept Abyss is still a hell of a card, and while we're talking about cards that net you 2 or 3 cards in advantage, there's one right there. Ninja. I mean, I don't want to talk up my own videos, but the Ninja combo that I and a bunch of other people kind of stumbled upon still does produce a pretty resilient extra link. You'll probably see extra decks change as a result of it to include things like Ninja Grandmaster Saizo, so that specifically you can have a backup plan that does something. You'll probably see more trap cards in the main deck, things like the ninjutsu arts that lock off your opponent's extra monster zone, but at the same time the availability of the extra link doesn't go away just because we banned the 2 most popular cards that enabled it. So that's basically it. I'm very optimistic, as always, for the future of Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm very excited to play this format. I will be at YCS 200, and I hope you all come and see me in person. As always, I will bring a stack of Pacifist the Phantasm City, and if you flag me down, I will sign you one, and then you can take it home and rip it up and go on 4chan and say, ha, look at this idiot who thinks that people want his signed pacifists. I certainly will be doing my best to rep the Trickstar name. I will be playing Floodgate Trickstar. Still haven't decided on if I'm playing like a Mech Knight engine or something, but that's something I'll come to in the next couple of days. Certainly this shakes things up a lot, and I'm excited to jump immediately onto Dueling Book and play the new format. That's it for me. I hope to see you all at the start of next week, and bye.